to scale up the milk mantra way. And I am Abhishek, your moderator and host for the day. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our chairman, sir, our senior members of the management team, our dean ma'am, the faculty, and last but not the least, our guest for us today, Mr. Srikumar Misra, who has taken time out to address our students. Now I would like to call upon Professor R.N. Patnaik, sir, to introduce our special guest of the day to our audience. Over to you, Patnaik, sir.
Thank you, Professor Abhishek. I'd like to start with a quote. Every idea generates from a need. If you solve the need of 1,000 people, it is still an idea. But if you solve for millions, it is a startup. This quote I have taken from Mr. Srikumar's Twitter handle. Compliment to you, sir. Friends, today we have amongst us great personality, a young entrepreneur, a novel idea generator, and a dreamer of all creative fields, who is seriously working on his drawing board, spending sleepless nights towards solving the need of about 1,000 poor village farmers with their happy cows in the outskirts of Goa village. A history was in the process of being written in golden letters, which will become future pride heritage of our country. That young entrepreneur brought quite revolution in that area and transformed his modest idea by his sheer tireless efforts to start a small startup company named Milk Mantra to meet future milk requirement of more than 1 million consumers in the state of India. He is none other than the revered role model of future managers, Shri Srikumar Misra, a visionary par excellence. Srikumar Misra, the founder and CEO of Milk Mantra, is a fourth generation entrepreneur from his ideas and managing the business. Milk Mantra is the first venture capital funded agri-food startup company. The new age dairy food venture engulfs brand capital, functional innovation, state-of-art technology, and modern management techniques are always ready to address the problem of consumer trust deficit. Under his leadership, Milk Mantra, with about rupees 18 crores turnover in the first year of operation in 2012, had a phenomenal growth of achieving rupees 180 crores in 2009. What a meticulous growth, 10 times within a span of 7 years. This shows the level of operational efficiency of the managing people. This sustainable growth of Milk Mantra has been reviewed in case studies by Stanford Business School and all IIMs, including our college, Bhavan Center for Communication and Management, Bhubaneswar. Sir, a focused, committed, knowledge intoxicated, visionary chemical engineer from Pune University in 1995 and MBA from prestigious XIMB Bhubaneswar in 1997, Srikumar Misra had an envious triumphant corporate career with the Tata Administrative Secretary, that is TAS. A dream job for brilliant of brilliants and providential amongst luminaries. You may be surprised to know that large number of Indian administrative service holders prefer Tata Administrative Service more than just the highest logo jobs. Sri Misra, within a short span of 8 years, rose to become the Director of Mergers and Acquisition of Tata Tetley Group in London. Again, an impossible, eventful journey for a new achiever and that to a self-start. Sri Misra is invited speakers in various global business forums and study foundations. His contribution in the field of social service is enormous. He is the founder of Misra Foundation, set up in the memory of his late father with an objective to make basic education available to underprivileged and connect monetary goodness from across the world to bring hope and dignity to poor and deprived local communities. Sir, you are working in the field of education. We pay regards to your great father, late Sri Misra. Through a verse from Jnana Yoga of Gita, which says, sharing Jnana, the knowledge to enlightenment, is the supreme. Sriyana Drabya Mayata Yajnata Jnana Yajna Parantapa Sarva Karma Akhilam Partha Dhane Parisamapta. The sacrifice to knowledge, the sharing of the knowledge to enlightenment is superior to that performed with any materialistic pujas. Friends, yesterday I happened to visit office of Milk Mantra to pay my regards to Srikumar. Unfortunately, he was not there, but believe me, I was rejuvenated with some extra energy. Serene, tranquil, calm, quiet ambience of the strikingly beautiful office, warmth, affectionate, smiling people, and nostalgic flavored, aromatic, steamed sweet coffee blended carefully with milk greets all visitors, depicting the commitment of Milk Mantra to ensure customer satisfaction. Thank you, Srikumar sir, for careful nurturing of the Milk Mantra. Srikumar's passion ranges from adventure tracking to play in pasture pool, the goal. Friends, Mr. Srikumar, friends, Srikumar is a multifarious and diverse personality, and hence such short introduction will not define his achievements. I can only do justice through a quote gained from Bhagavad Gita slok picked up from the Karma Yoga, which is perhaps the reason for Sri Kumar's sustainable growth story. Karmanya karmaya pased karmani cha karmaya sa buddhiman manusyesu sa ukta karma. The meaning of this is very, very philosophical. One who sees action in action and inaction in action is the wisest leader, as he has performed all sides of action. Shri Kumar sir, we welcome you to this August gathering. We have amongst us General B.K. Mahapatra, Aviation Chairman Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan and BCCM Bhubaneswar. General Mahapatra is an combat officer in armored corps in Indian Army and had the honor of wearing the army uniform for long 40 years. He took lead roles in 4 wars during his tenure: 1961 Goa liberation, 1962 war with China, 1965 years pattern tank battle in Khemkaran sector, which we have never forgotten, against Pakistan. And again in 1971, war with Pakistan, leading in capturing large Pakistani territory in western sector.
Please leave it. Leave it.
Besides, he undertook anti-insurgency operation in Jammu and Kashmir, Mizoram, disaster management activities in Assam, Rajasthan, Gujarat, and Andhra Pradesh. General Mahapatra, during his service career, was also
Please,
teaching assignment with armored.
Arun Patnaik, sir, please
Sir.
let us get on to the seminar.
Patnaik sir, I mean,
General Mahapatra's thing.
Patnaik sir, if you can hear Chairman sir is requesting you to continue further.
Please leave it. It is not necessary at all.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Anyway, General Mahapatra is an ardent practitioner of Niskam, that is performing without expecting the result as described in Gita. I'll cut it short. Karmanya adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana Ma karma phala bhurva te sango aswa karmani. We have amongst us senior our Director General, Assistant Director, Additional Director General, Lieutenant Colonel P.K. Sahu, and Dr. Sujata Mangaras. Dean cum Senior Director, all of them are great teachers and motivators and constantly in touch with students to show them the right path for success and happiness. Through a verse from Gita again, I pay regards to them and would like to end with this. Tameva saranam gaccha sarva bhavena bharata tat prasadat paramam santi sthanam tapyasi sasvatam. O my teachers, I bow down in your foot for param santi and ultimate salvation. Thank you. With this introduction ceremony, I request Professor Abhishek Sinha to moderate the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Patnaik, for this introduction. Yes, we are indeed privileged to have Mr. Srikumar over here with us, addressing our students. For the audience, there is an instruction like if you have any questions, we'll be taking it towards the end of the session. Yes, and you can put in your questions on the chat box, which we'll put it to our guest of the day. And before we proceed, if our Chairman Sir has any opening remarks to share, I would request him before we proceed ahead with the session. Chairman Sir, if you would like to.
Welcome all of you. It's a wonderful occasion to welcome young entrepreneur, and we will not waste any time. Let us hear him, and that should be enough time for question and answer. So wish you all the best. Thank you very much. Please go ahead. Thank you very much.
So welcome, Mr. Srikumar, or as you're called Shri. Right? So from a successful corporate role to starting a business, really would be interested and love to hear about your journey. So if you could just share this journey, how it all started. Over to you, Mr. Srikumar.
Thank you, Professor Abhishek, and thank you, Professor Patnaik, for that very generous introduction. And thank you, General Mahapatra, for having me over. It's a pleasure addressing everyone. I wish this could have been across in a room wherein I would have seen the students, but I'm hoping that this will be interactive enough. And what I will do is I will talk about in line with the structure of the talk, which is about from starting up to scaling up the Milk Mantra way. I will share my experience of this journey, and in this I will share some slides as well, which might give some flavor and color to what I'm trying to sort of convey. I understand that most of the audiences are young MBA aspirants, so there might be certain things out there that they can relate to from their text. But let me tell you that the real world, and especially if you're an entrepreneur, behaves very differently as such. But everything that you learn becomes useful in some form or the other at the same time. So maybe let me take a step back to when I started Milk Mantra, which was back in 2009-10. I quit my job in London where I was doing mergers and acquisitions, and came back to India, to specifically my home state Orissa, to set up Milk Mantra to solve a large problem. There was this large problem of trust deficit between consumers and food. In India, all of us are aware of the high levels of adulteration, contamination across the entire food value chain that we have. And unfortunately, that is a reality we have to live with, but we have to do something about it. I felt compelled as an individual had the experience, the privilege of working across the country very early, across the world very early in my life, and having seen great food companies across the world as well, I felt that we really need to solve this problem first in India before we really are able to leapfrog India to the next league. So when I looked at this problem of trust deficit, it was biggest in the dairy sector, and here I will share some statistics, which will be very very interesting, and also what really becomes a framework when you think about starting up something. How do you look at a market? How do you assess an opportunity? And what are the sort of key areas to look at from a product market fit, and also from a long-term sustainability perspective. So maybe I'll just share a slide to illustrate that. And Professor Abhishek, I'm just clarifying, would you like me to continue in this flow, or do you want
Yeah,
to?
yeah, yeah, yeah. As you wish. I mean, it's an open structure. I mean, whichever way you like to take it forward, I mean, it's okay.
All right. Okay. So if you look at dairy, it's a very large sector in India. It's a $50 billion category, and you can multiply it by 75 or 80, whichever exchange rate you take, to understand how large that size is. Whenever you're looking at addressing a problem in a large scale, the opportunity has to be large, which is very important. A $50 billion opportunity is a big one. And within that, if you look at the chart, the pie chart at the bottom, the organized sector today within this $50 billion is actually less than 25%. The unorganized sector is more than 75%. Way back in 2000, sort of 10, 11, when I started, the organized sector was just about 18%. What does that mean? That means that if you look at the evolution of various industries, various markets, they have a way of moving from the unorganized to the organized sector. And if you look at Western markets, for example, take organized retail, it's almost 100%. Take organized food value chains, take organized business sectors, they're almost 100%. Whereas in India, when you look at several sectors, we have very large unorganized sectors. And that's the same across various emerging markets across the world, especially say in Southeast parts of Asia, Southeast Asia, Africa, and even in China, there is still a large unorganized sector in certain value chains. So that clearly gives an opportunity for disruption in various forms. And a sector which has both scale and the opportunity to sort of disrupt provides kind of the right elements to bring in a disruptive idea which can be scaled up into a large business. So that was the whole thinking. And but to address that, we had to look at a very tangible differentiation. So what do I mean by that? Here's a sector, here's an opportunity, and there is a large problem of trust deficit. Now, to address that, we had to bring in product innovation which actually addresses a consumer's pain point. And I realized that in milk, everybody we know in India boils milk, and we said that how do we really disrupt that status quo, that thinking, and we can do that only if we are able to provide the consumer sufficient trust that they can have it straight from the pack. And that we can do not just by focusing on the highest quality, the highest processing technology, on all of that which was given, but actually to bring in some touch and feel differentiation into the product. So we did a lot of work on the basic reason, on this basic consumer insight, and realize that milk spoils because of two reasons. One that all of us are aware of, which is temperature or cold, the requirement of a cold chain. The other is actually very interesting. It's light. When light falls on milk, the microbial activity gets enhanced and milk starts spoiling faster. It's not rocket science, and a lot of it's a known fact, but it was astounding that no one was really trying to address it. So we looked at this as a problem, as an opportunity, and thought, can we do something about it? So we re-engineered our packaging film and made something called Tripack, which is a three-layered film which prevents light exposure damage to milk. And by doing that, we realized that the shelf life of milk could be more than doubled in cold chain. And that really gave us the sort of confidence and a platform to position Milky Moo, which is our flagship brand, as something which is truly pure and you don't need to boil. So even though it was truly pure, if you just went and said that, people would need a reason to believe, and we provided that reason to believe with this touch and feel packaging innovation and a very strong proposition, which was around no need to. So all of you are kind of marketing students or interested in that space of brand positioning, and how do you create differentiate a product. These are some of the insights that I have to sort of share with you from our early days of taking a basic product like milk, which is almost like a commodity, and but really bringing in the essence of differentiating branding, challenger branding, as we call it, into it. Along with that, we also realized that if we are to really create a sustainable company and a brand, and a supply chain which is really focused on quality at all times, it has to be able to generate margins or profits which are able to sustain the higher costs. And to do that, we have to create a premium brand. Okay, so there was a lot of thinking around creating the positioning and actually pricing a mass premium brand, because without that we would not have the power of sustainability, financial sustainability with us. And you can imagine sort of 10 years back, no dairy company in India was differentiated. Everybody was selling at the same price, same kind of products, and we said we came in with this completely differentiated product, and also a pricing which was mass premium, which was in the price range of anything from 10 to or 12 to 25% premium. And we felt that if we are able to address this trust deficit problem and at the same time have a great product which solves this problem, then consumers will see the value and be willing to pay this small premium, which was very challenger thinking at that point in time. Many of the industry experts wrote us off saying that you have to sell below the cooperatives and everything, all the large players. You cannot price it higher. But we went with that, and that really worked as well in establishing the positioning of the brand and really touched the consumers at a deep level. I think they remove this slide for now. So secondly, when the other part, which is very very critical apart from the front end, is the entire supply chain of milk. So I'm sure everybody understands what is FMCG, which is fast moving consumer goods, right? And there's a reason why it is called fast, because the turnaround of it is fast. The supply chain is fast. You have to distribute products every 15 days, 20 days, maybe 1 week, and it's very intensive. Milk, we call it MFMCG. It's the mother of all FMCG. The distribution cycle, the supply chain is every day. You have to collect milk from thousands of farmers, process it, sell it the next day, or depending upon cycle, the day after at best, at most, and collect the money the same day as well, because if the cycle is not closed, we might end up losing that money. And this has to all happen as well, the distribution, just within 4 hours early in the morning, from say 4 5 a.m. till 8 a.m. So if you look at this kind of an intensive supply chain, it's unparalleled. It's extremely intensive. So those that was the other piece which needed a lot of focus if you want to solve it in an organized way, and that needed a lot of thinking. So we went right to the source of this supply chain, which is farmers, and to we structured a whole sourcing program, which we call a ethical milk sourcing program, and that was one of the reasons why I also started this in Odisha. My motivation was not just to solve this trust deficit problem, but I also wanted to build something which will impact the lives of poor farmers in Odisha in a scalable way. And Eastern India was most unorganized in that sense. The national statistic which I gave you back then, around 18-20% was in the organized space. Odisha and Eastern India was just around 10%. So there was a huge lack of organization, which meant that farmers were not getting the opportunity to get connected to organized networks and benefit from them. So we structured our ethical bill sourcing program and said, how do we connect to each farmer directly? And uh, this was one of the sort of major interventions in our entire supply chain. We brought in a lot of technology, in fact, right from day one, where we captured data on each farmer. What is the quality of milk? How much are they earning? How do we intervene so that their earnings go up and the quality of milk goes up? Because not only will the farmers' output and efficiency improve, we will also have access to the best quality milk, which is what our ethical milk sourcing is all about, which is happy farmers means happy cows means the best quality milk. And if you are able to solve that equation, to a large extent we will have a very structured sourcing network which can sustainably provide us the input that we need. So at one end we did that at the beginning of the supply chain. At the front end we did cutting edge innovation in terms of product development and the brand positioning, a very challenger approach. In between, in the whole processing space, we really focused on getting the best quality technology, which and we have sort of the only fully integrated sort of Tetra Pak milk processing line in Eastern India is at Milk Mantra in our main plant, which is near Goa. There is no other plant like that. But to do all of this, obviously we needed capital, and I took almost 20 months to raise my first round of capital, which was I needed around $4 or $5 million at that point in time, which was 25 odd crores then. And it took a long time. It was a very uphill battle because such a venture had never been VC funded, venture capital funded in India. And it took a very unique structuring wherein I got 22 angel investors from all across the world and an impact investor. So all of that is a different story. But yes, finally, all that funding also came together whilst the early works were on, and Milk Mantra got off the ground. It got off the ground, and we launched the Milky Moo brand in late 2011, around that time. And just before that, 7 months before that, we had started our our ethical milk sourcing network with just 8 farmers. And today I'm happy to share that we have more than 68,000 farmers in our ethical milk sourcing program, and which impacts nearly half a million, nearly half a million lives in the rural ecosystem as such. Every month, or rather on a daily basis, more than 20,000 farmers are pouring milk with us each and every day. We are connected to our network. We have cloud based data capture systems which capture the data, and so we have analytics which understand all of that. So that's one piece of it. So we started off with those 8 farmers, and over the next several years, we started building the startups. Revenue started scaling. Rohit, can you share a slide? Revenue started scaling, and starting from zero revenues from day one, we why do I keep the default on this? starting from zero revenues back in 2011-12, if you can see the bottom of the graph, we slowly started gathering pace. So you can see some of the interventions which are here early in 2009-10. I founded Misra. We set up our ethical milk sourcing program. The funding happened. We launched our first flagship product and campaign. And over the next 2 years, we extended the range where we did a lot of innovation in probiotics, for example, probiotic yogurt or dahi. We launched that, which again sort of was really liked by consumers who gave it a great thumbs up. So starting from distributing to just 500 households, we started growing significantly. And by the end of 2014, I think we had racked up around 40-50 crores of revenue in just 2 years of our operations, because we got all the elements of the mix, or most of the elements of the mix right. Of course, we made several mistakes along the way as well, but we kept learning from them and we kept on addressing those problems. So these first 3-4 years were what I would say was our startup phase, and we reached that level, and then suddenly, we realized that as if you speak to any entrepreneur who has really built and scaled businesses, starting up is an extremely challenging task. But once you've started up, you will realize then that the next phase is even more difficult, scaling up, and that's next phase that I will go on to. So some of the challenges, once you started up, you've got revenue coming in, you've got some, your supply chain sorted, you've got good product, you've got innovation flowing. Suddenly you realize that to scale up, whatever you have done so far is no longer good enough. You have to do a lot of things differently. You need to rethink. You need to sort of revisit all your assumptions and re-engineer your entire business model. So we realized that there were many external and internal challenges to scaling up, and quite often many of the challenges to scaling up for a startup or for an entrepreneur are internal rather than external. I mean, external was very kind of direct. We've listed on the slide, you can see below. Access to markets. There were big entrenched players, cooperatives, larger players. For example, I know other parts of Eastern India who were operating, and these were sort of and some of our channels were completely blocked. For example, these were many of the challenges in terms of access to markets when you have to scale up. For example, it's easy to get your first 10 distribution partners, but getting the next 90 to scale up to 100 is a big task. So that's one of the issues. The other is the whole regulatory complexities, the policies, which kind of in India are overwhelmingly in favor of the cooperative sector as opposed to the private sector, though the private sector has been the one which has really been bringing in efficiency focus on the entire agri value chain. So those were some external ones. But internally, we realized that we needed a lot more process orientation. It could not be where it was people dependent, and because you need a great team, you need great people, but you have to have process at various levels, both functionally and operating at a cross-functional level as well. Secondly, you need the right kind of resources. Starting up is all a hustle, so you can do it with a small team. You can be hands-on and all of that. But beyond a point, if you need to scale up, you need to have the right team, the right kind of resources. Getting skilled manpower, senior management people, and all of that is a challenge when you're working in a zero ecosystem or a sort of low ecosystem, startup ecosystem place like Odisha or even Eastern India. So those were kind of challenges. Thirdly, you can do some innovation to start out, as I mentioned, but continuous innovation is important to remain a challenger brand, to continuously keep reinventing yourself and addressing your market opportunities. And fourthly, of course, infrastructure investments, be it technology, be it manufacturing, be it scaling costs like advertising and promotion. All of these needed investments. So internally, there were all of these challenges to scale up, and externally there were certain things for us which we were learning and learning how to handle and manage. And it's very important that this balance is right. And so we did several interventions during this time, including strengthening our team. Maybe you can show the next slide. We did at this time acquire our next plant, which was in Western Odisha. Beyond the startup phase in 2015, we did that. We expanded, we did more innovation. We launched Meetha Mishti Dahi, but a very different take on that product, which was a much more lighter yogurt, appealing to a more contemporary audience. We developed a curcumin milkshake, a milkshake with curcumin. Curcumin is the active ingredient of haldi, and I won't get into that, but we did 2 years of research, R&D effort to develop that product, and we wanted to contemporize the entire, the whole knowledge that is there around haldi doodh and see how we can make a more contemporary shelf-stable product. So actually, now we have our US patents on this particular product, which is the first of its kind, and it had been a concept, and we will see how to kind of commercialize it in a different way. We raised, apart from the first round of funding, raised capital from one of the largest asset management company in the world, which is Fidelity, out of the US. Whose fund 8 Roads invested in us in our Series C funding. We did various things on our back-end supply chain. We signed tripartite agreements with with banking partners to fund our farmers who could scale. If they had 1 cow, can they buy 2 more cows? How do we do that? So we did all of those interventions in our ethical sourcing program. We innovated further. Trying, experimenting at all times. We launched super vitamin milk, which wasn't a big success at all, and took a long time to scale up. So, but through all of this, we continued our journey of growth, because if you stagnate at that point of time, then it's very easy to you cannot sustain a startup phase for too long. You will die. So you need to scale up. So which is what we were able to do from 2014-15 right up to till 2018. Our revenues continued growing. If you put a trend line in the graph, you'll get an exponential curve. Our CAGRs, our compounded annual growth rates, were in the zone of 50%. So all these were significant metrics wherein our business was growing. I think at that point in time, we had almost grown to 40,000 farmers. We had acquired consumers across, and I think by 2017-18, and back in 2013-14, when we were probably around 45-50 crores of revenue, by 17-18, it had grown to almost 4 times of that. We were around 160 crores plus by then, and that's when we realized that, or we said that, okay, we need to now recalibrate. There are 2 ways of scaling up. One is to scale up continuously from a revenue or top line perspective. Though you will be burning cash, you will be making losses, and that is possible in certain sectors. Say if you take the sort of new age digital tech, quite often that is the pathway from a 0 to 1, where immense amount of cash burn happens through startup scale up phase, even further for longer duration, till you build such a large platform which is able to cover costs. But in certain sectors, especially real world brick and mortar businesses, if you follow that kind of a route, and your unit economics is not sustainable, or at the same time your fixed costs are growing far more stronger than your variable costs, than your contribution margins, for example, then you will never be scalable or never be sustainable. So at that point in time, we said, let's shift gears. Let's move on to the next phase, and the focus clearly became not just growth, but profitable growth. How do we get financial robustness into the company? So at that point in time, which is essentially the last 2.5 years, we focused on a very strong continuous improvement process or of efficiency. We invested in having SAP, which is an enterprise resource planning and ERP backbone, and we went in with the best SAP HANA, which was top of the line, even though it was a very big platform for us. We automated as much as we could. We expanded, of course, whilst our regular business of the supply chain and all of that was there, these were all very important process interventions. We ensured to see how our existing channels of business, the repeat business was strong. That we were not losing the channels that we were there in, and at the same time, how do we grow into other markets? We launched, for example, several years back into Kolkata, and in modern trade over there, we are one of the top brands. So our focus has been very limited to few stores, which we are now looking at scaling up. We looked at an enterprise-wide digital transformation. We have a tech stack across the company, from the front end where it's Salesforce automation, to the entire logistics, which is called the vehicle tracking system, or the logistics automation, to the back end where we have automated milk collection units, where farmers' data is captured on the cloud. In fact, our rich data of farmers right from day one till now enables us to apply more advanced analytics and machine learning to see what kind of insights can be gleaned and what interventions can be made. And finally, about leveraging economies of scale. So we did all of these very focused way, and took a conscious call that, okay, we may not grow at 40% as we were used to. Maybe for a couple of years we will grow at 10%, but we will ensure that we become fully profitable during the next 2 to 3 years. And that was the focus in the last 2 years, which was the the sustainable phase, which is about financial robustness. And we can move on. And that's what we did in the last 2 years. We also, whilst doing this, we continued our product innovation. All of us love our chena podo. We said, how do we make a chena podo? It's a fantastic dessert, and the dairy dessert category in India is $1 billion category. How do we make and why can't chena podo play an important role in that across the sector? So we developed a whole commercial process, brought in packaging technology, and I think we've got one of the best tasting chena podos today, and we've done more innovation in developing a chocolate chena podo and all of that, which have all been piloted and have been working well. And other than COVID impacting our plans, we were looking at taking it to all metro markets, which will happen soon. During all of this, we were also recognized, like the Financial Times, which is the leading pink paper or economic daily across the world, in their review, found us one of the fastest growing companies in Asia Pacific in the consumer space. We launched our Daily Moo app also. I don't know how many of you use them, which is a subscription direct to home app. So you just subscribe onto, download the app, subscribe on it, and depending upon your subscription plan, Milky Moo gets delivered to your home every morning. We've been building that up, and in the last 1 year, the subscriber base has grown more than 4x on this, and we are really looking at becoming the largest delivery app amongst all delivery apps that may be there in Bhubaneswar. The big ones, which are there all over India, and even operating here, almost all of them, the biggest one out here. So that's something which we're putting a lot of focus in. And of course, it was important to keep continuing the focus on our farmer base. We grew to 63 and now 68,000 farmers across more than I think 12 districts in Odisha. Doing all of this, a very important thing happened very recently, where the US Development Finance Corporation, which is a very prestigious institution, came forward and they have become a financial collaborator of ours and would be investing a structured debt of $10 million in Milk Mantra further. So enhancing all of this, building a high governance business is very important to be able to attract that kind of investment as well. In the meanwhile, even the Fast company, which is a sort of a New York-based platform, also looked at Milk Mantra. All of these things happened, which is important from the journey of starting up right up to scaling up and then building sustainability into the business. Through the COVID period, if you can see in the graph, we were impacted, but we are now back into the growth zone because we built such a robust brand, and the consumer connect is strong. Our farmers are there. So because of which all of these, we are back into the growth zone, and so hopefully this year we will close with a number from a top line perspective, which will not only be 250 crore plus in spite of COVID, but more importantly, it will be fully financially robust company where the bottom line is in the black and absolutely profitable, which is highly critical. So in fact, if you look at our EBITDA, and the EBITDA is a very important metric for businesses, which some of you might be aware is earnings before interest, depreciation, tax, and amortization. So it basically is the sort of cash generating ability, the cash profit generating ability of a business. And so since the last 4 quarters, we've been EBITDA positive. And in spite of COVID impact, in the last 2 quarters, we have been substantially EBITDA positive. So the whole thesis of the focus was that we will build a high quality business, which will have high levels of governance, will build a challenger brand. And by doing this, we will do this in the most ethical way, which impacts farmers' lives as we grow. We are able to pay the highest level prices consistently to farmers. And by doing all of this in a way which also sort of builds financial robustness, and that is possible. I think that's something which we've been able to sort of demonstrate and believe ourselves that for building a highly profitable and growth business, you don't need to cut corners anywhere, and you can do it. You can build a sort of good, highly ethical, well-governed business with high costs, but at the same time, if it is run properly with the right kind of revenue realization, then you can build a highly sustainable business which impacts all stakeholders in the right way. And that's what is really the purpose of a business. The purpose of a business, which is not just to make money, but actually to impact the entire community, the ecosystem where the business is built. If we are not able to do that, then I don't think we're building the right kind of businesses. And that's the thinking that I'd like to leave with all of you youngsters as you move forward. These are all the things that we did in our journey in the last 10 years. But very importantly, an important dimension that I want to leave with you as a thought is the thought of a moral compass. As you move forward, in your professional careers, taking on jobs, taking on other opportunities. Some of you might become entrepreneurs now or later on. But whatever you do, your moral compass is the most important asset that you will have and that you will live with. Unless you are sort of mindful of this moral compass that you carry and follow it diligently without compromise at all, we will sort of not be able to do justice to the purpose that we should all be working towards, whilst becoming very successful, whilst building scalable businesses, whilst becoming highly successful in our professional careers and what have you. Our moral compass is the asset that will really be able to propel us forward. And that's the thought I'd like to leave with you. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you, Mr. Srikumar. Indeed, an interesting journey. Uh, yes, you understood the market gaps and a lot of innovations, etc., to build up this business. I have one question for you. Like, I mean, you said there are a lot of challenges when you get into the growth phase or the scaling up phase. But during the startups, right, there are a lot of startups which come up, and some of them succeed, go on to become a reasonably sized business, but some of them, lot of them fail also. Like, with your experience of running a startup, like what should the founder look for as red flags which will give them an early warning as to yes, there is something wrong with this business or the business model per se or the markets, which will enable him to take real corrective actions at the right moment or even exit that business? Or do you think, I mean, the person, if he has started a company, he should stick to that business till it dies a natural death, or he should exit?
So yeah, that's very good question. But and there are sort of several theories that are going around now about failing fast. For example, if you're doing a startup, if it is not working, then you should fail fast. Some of those things don't really work in India, and I'll share with you why. Building up anything out here takes a lot more time. Not double, almost triple the time, triple the effort. Given our whole ecosystem and our whole set of challenges that we face. So actually, even startup entrepreneurs really need to focus and continue that focus for a much longer time. That belief needs to be there before you really decide whether something is not working. It's not like try for 1 year, 2 years, and give it up. I see a lot of casual entrepreneurs now doing that. I'm not sure that's the sort of right approach. But what are the red flags? I think the first thing is that we have to have the insight of spotting an opportunity and a large opportunity. There are many opportunities that are there, and but if it is a small one, then you have your ambition, your plans, and everything in that scale. You cannot sort of think of becoming a scalable entrepreneur and build a scalable business in that kind of a slice. So scoping that opportunity and having that insight into that gap is the most important one. And quite often we get it wrong also. If we get it wrong, I think it's something to acknowledge at that point in time and not say that no, I'm going to take 100% of the market. That's never going to be possible, right? So that's one red flag, I would say. The second red flag is if your unit economics, which means how much revenue you're making and what are your costs. So and then what's your on a variable cost basis, how is your unit economics positive or not, and is it robust enough or not, it is growing or not. If that is not there, then that's a problem. And quite often we start with negative unit economics, but there should be a pathway to a positive unit economics. And the third thing is all about the people, the inputs that you get from all around, from all stakeholders. If there is a lot of negativity around or negative feedback or amongst people in the company, people externally who are connected, then that could be a very serious problem. So that's red flag that needs to be addressed immediately as such. So I think these are three from a early on, from a startup perspective. These are three clear sort of red flags, and then depending upon the context, there can be several more as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Srikumar. Yes. And there is one really interesting question. Like the students, I mean, maybe getting into business, pursue an entrepreneurial venture right now, or maybe they would get into a job and later on think of switching on to a business, starting the business of their own, as you did, right? And then it's an interesting question I would like to ask you. When you were quitting your job, it's obviously a successful career, a good company, and then you are moving on to from something which is known and established to something which is completely unknown and uncharted territory. You do not know, it's nothing is there. So what were the thoughts which were going in your mind? I mean, people would be talking a lot of things to you about that, right? Pursuing a business. So what were the thoughts? How did you make up your mind? Like, I am moving out from a known thing to an unknown thing. Uh, how did you measure whether it's a correct decision or a wrong decision? How much time I'll stick my neck out onto it? Or is there a plan B which you also had simultaneously when you started on this journey?
See, as an entrepreneur, you have to have, we are kind of eternally optimistic about things. So sometimes we kind of become over optimistic as well, but it goes with the territory of being an entrepreneur. You have to be extremely positive and believe in what you are doing. But at the same time, not be foolish enough to recognize red flags. That's when the danger happens. But yeah, I mean, a lot of things though I kind of had a very positive belief and passion in the whole idea, there were a lot of question marks. I'd be lying if I said I had no question marks in my mind. So obviously, sort of leaving everything and coming to pursue something completely unknown, that too in a part of the world where which is not clear. There is no sort of there is no evidence of a sort of a startup ecosystem which was there. So all of these become real challenges when you have to operate in this kind of condition. So there were many questions in my mind. I was very worried because what I wanted to do also, before I could produce one packet of product at the other end, I needed straight out 20-25 crores of investment. And I obviously didn't have that money. And that was another big risk. It was not something it was not a software product. It was not a tech product which you could pilot out of a garage, build a prototype, and then test it and get traction and then move forward. You can do quite often things like that on digital products, but something like this, you need significant amount of investment before anything comes out at the other end. So that was another huge risk, and I knew that it would be a challenging one to raise funding. But I didn't know it would be so challenging, and I hadn't realized that Milk Mantra would become the first agri-food startup to be venture capital funded in India. Nothing had happened, till then. So those were all sort of pretty difficult times going through, and all of them raised questions in your mind. But with conviction and focus, one had to be at it. I sometimes you have to just focus on plan A. Having a plan B, in these sort of situations is also difficult. So I'm not sure if I clearly had a plan B at that point in time.
Really, very, very interesting. And in fact, we would like the audience. I mean, we will open the floor for the audience to ask questions if they have anything. Yes, we have a question from Rohit. He is asking just a minute. So he is asking, what is your vision for carbon footprint of the company? As what the milk industry uses a lot of water and as well as on land and soil. So how is your company going forward in this battle against climate change? Have you adopted what kind of processes or systems? Or
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a very good question, pertinent one in today's context, and everyone should have sustainability in their framework of building any business. So I'll share with you when we started out itself, I wanted to have the most efficient sort of packaging format. So I did a lot of research to understand, for example, what is our glass bottles good? For example, are our cartons good? Is Tetra Pak good? Or are these pouches good? And it was sort of really interesting to learn that the carbon footprint of the pouches that we use is the lowest amongst all packaging formats. So that was also one of the decisions we took early on, and that we would use high quality sort of plastics which are entirely recyclable as well. So that's one thing upfront. The other issue is around the resource intensiveness of the dairy industry, and yes, it's fact. You can't deny it. It is a resource intensive industry. But I think we have to differentiate between how dairy industries in the Western developed world operate and how they operate in India. all of these facts about the dairy industry are largely in the context of large organized dairy farms in the Western context, which are really not, in my view, not the right way of for this sector and for from an environment perspective as well. The good thing in India is that we have small marginal farmers, each of them having one, two, maybe 10 cows at best. And that is a more sustainable way of for this sector. And our sourcing is entirely directly from farmers, of marginal farmers like that, which is a very sort of positive thing from a sustainability perspective. And we've never that's why we also sort of never thought that we will encourage farmers to have sort of 500 to 1,000 cows and make farms like that. So I think it's important to put that in perspective. Secondly, if you look at water usage, for example, dairy processing units and inefficient ones use a lot of water. So that's something which we've put a lot of focus on. We have metrics which are, so we have a Monday huddle, for example. One of the metrics which is evaluated is how much is the water consumption. So it should be amongst best in the industry, for example, best in class. And how do we keep lowering that? So we've done all of that. Very importantly, we have one of the best ETPs, which is called an effluent treatment plant that any dairy plant across eastern India has. We've invested more than $1 million in an effluent treatment plant. It's state-of-the-art effluent treatment plant in our main Go plant, and water that we use for processing is all again purified and sort of cleaned to the best standards, which is again sort of let out and can be used for again irrigation and any other purpose. So from all of those perspectives, it's a very clear important focus for us in the industry. I might also share that there is a sort of globally this movement of veganism, for example. It's not necessary. It's not scientifically backed. I have gone, for example, since the last 1 year, I decided to go vegetarian. So I'm a vegetarian, but I'm not a vegan because I've done my research. I found out. Especially for poorer, for countries like India, for example, dairy proteins are a very important element in our diet. And even in Europe, because of this vegan movement, many infants are growing with malnutrition. So there is a place for dairy clearly in our food and in our lives, but it is not that it should be in the way where per capita consumption is very high. There are unsustainable practices in both in the back end in farming and the sort of processing, all of that. Those things are not good elements to be there in the sector. So we continually remain focused on all of these aspects.
Any more questions from the audience?
I have a question.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Initial funding, when you conceived that you will do a startup, and that startup project report must have indicated X amount to be necessary. What was your struggle, and what all did you do to raise this fund and the flow of finances? That is one. Secondly, linked to this, now that you have done a very good successful farm here, what are the competitions and what is the growth potential in Odisha, Eastern Zone and India? Thank you.
So to the first question, yeah, I mean it's a totally different. I could spend an hour on that. It's been a very challenging journey. In fact, because of our unique fundraise, there is a case study on my fundraise and Milk Mantra's first round funding at Stanford. So when I set out to do my first round of funding, I quickly, sort of within a year's time, not quickly, it took a whole year, in fact, to kind of realize that because there was no blueprint for doing an investment like this, most of the VC funds that were there in India who are copying or kind of replicating a model from Silicon Valley out here. And in Silicon Valley, there was no, the curve was in a different sort of stage altogether, and the VC investments were into tech businesses. But India was in a different stage of the curve. But our VC industry was sort of on a different curve. So I realized that I had to do things very differently. So everybody was keen to invest, but they didn't have a blueprint and didn't even know how to evaluate a company like ours. It was just me and a piece of paper at the same time, nothing on the ground. I needed a lot of investment to kick things off. So I said, how do I go about it? So I kind of broke it down into sort of smaller pieces and took a more 360-degree approach to it. So I said that we will raise debt and have debt as a sort of component in this, and see how, if we are able to raise the equity, because significant investments will go into creating asset on the ground, can we get a bank to fund it? Which on paper seems a great idea, but if as a first generation entrepreneur you go to a bank asking for funding, it is just next to impossible. It's we've seen the kind of loot that has happened in banks, but if a genuine entrepreneur goes and seeks funding, there are extremely uphill challenges, and it still remains. That's unfortunately the reality. So I said, anyway, we will try and do this. The other half we will raise from equity, and the balance, so half of that equity, can I raise it from smaller investors? So I reached out to a lot of angel investors, small, people who my say friends, people who I didn't know at all, who were professionally connected, and things like that. And slowly, somebody said, I like what you're trying to build. Maybe I will invest 5 lakhs in it. Somebody said, this is great, and you've left everything, and I believe in your vision. I'll invest 50 lakhs in it. So suddenly I had like that 4-5 crores of commitments. I didn't take the money immediately, but I had commitments. At the same time, since we were building a very highly impactful business, I said that, can we get an impact investor? So Avishkar, who are one of the leading impact investors and who were also very early in their stage as a fund, they said, this business has the potential to create immense impact in people's lives, and we could look at doing that. So they came in with a 4 crore investment, which was the largest ever investment they had done at that point in time. So whilst all of these things were coming in, I was talking to the bank and sort of running there each and every day. And then, fortunately, sort of the bank also said that, okay, if all of these equity investments and people from all over the world are willing to invest, then we will look at it, but we want all this collateral, we want your shirt, we want everything. So I said, okay, fine, take everything, we will build. So I had to go through that whole journey and raise the funding. So first round funding, raising startup capital is an extremely intensive task. And I think we are in very fortunate times right now in India. There is a lot on the supply side. There is a lot of capital, startup capital now. It's a great time. Back, 9-10 years back, it was not the case like that. And hopefully, that aspect will become much less intensive as we move forward. The second part, in terms of the opportunity, I think the large opportunity still lies. There is a large opportunity in Eastern India, but it needs significant amount of investments, staying power, the ability to build a brand. So we have done all of that, and we are looking at scaling the Milky Moo brand across Eastern India. Kolkata is a big sort of opportunity for us, so we are actively sort of looking at options there. We are innovating on both geographical expansion and on product category expansion, as well. So those are clear focus areas. In Odisha, you will be sort of amazed to know that the maximum amount of milk powder dumping in the country happens into Odisha. For legacy reasons, where there was no organized network, farmers were not connected to markets, markets were not connected. So our consumers, our households got used to having milk from powder. So it's unbelievable, but more than what all the 3-4 main fresh dairy companies like us, including Omfed, what we produce and sell in Odisha, more than that, all of us put together, more than that is dumped as powder into the state from outside, especially from Western India. And imagine all of that revenue goes out of here, and our farmers are suffering because of that. This is something that I have raised raised as a point, and we need to do something about it. And hopefully consumers will realize that they need to consume fresh dairy, which is not only more nutritious but also impacts the lives of millions of farmers in the local ecosystem, in the local region as well. And hopefully policy will at some stage address this anomaly of dumping into Odisha. So I think there is that whole opportunity as well, which exists here.
So it was great to hear you, Srikumar. Now I call upon okay. There is one more question from Rohit Kundu, a student of BCCM. So he's asking, do you see Odisha as a startup hub in next 10 years, and which of the areas which you think are most opportunistic?
So I think it's kind of difficult to speak about in very specific terms, but clearly there is the ecosystem. Like I can share with you, when I started out, there was nothing, but there's a lot of things that have been happening out here, and the government has put together a policy framework. I was part of the team as well, which was formulating that policy, and we put in things in place 3 years back. So there is a focus from the government side to build an ecosystem, but ecosystems cannot be built by the government alone. It needs a threshold mass of entrepreneurs, ideas, enabling factors, the interconnections that are required. India itself is kind of growing as a startup, but it is spiky. So we have 3-4 zones. If you look at largely, say, take Bangalore, Mumbai, NCR, these are the 3 areas. So, but will nothing else develop in the next 10 years? Absolutely not. Certainly, a few more hubs will come up, and Odisha has the opportunity to develop as a a startup hub, certainly, with the right amount of execution focus, and also if the youngsters really look at applying themselves to entrepreneurial pursuit also. In terms of specific opportunities, clearly, I think there are. I would say I would bucket them into 2 areas. One is the the entire processing, manufacturing side. I think there is a large opportunity. So why can't Odisha, for example, we have build some of the best food brands out of here, which will go across the country. I think there's a great potential for that. It needs thinking, it needs policy, it needs investment, but it is possible. So I think food processing as an area it could be a very important area for Odisha, and the other area is around the is in software product development. So I'm not talking about IT services, but around software product development. Today, cloud as a a business model is growing exponentially, and one could potentially build niche cloud products out of here, which can address as a market not just India but the global markets as well. And I think COVID has taught us to work in very remote and interesting ways. So one could be based out of here, but could have employees working from home from different parts of the country or the world, and build such a software tech product as well, which has revenue address from different parts of the world. So I think that is another area or sort of a sector which clearly has opportunity from here. We have a lot of youngsters passing out. Engineering tech talent is kind of there also, and that's a possibility as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, if there are no questions left, anybody else? Anything?
Yes, I have a question. I have a question.
Yeah, sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Okay. Srikumar, question is, Government of Odisha, I'm not talking about central government also, both of them, have many schemes which are coming out, and particularly during COVID-19 and for the MSME. And it sounds and looks very attractive. And Government of Odisha schemes also, we had agriculture based and horticulture, etc., OBIDA, and they gave out lots of things that if you have a barren land, you just grow grass and we'll give you money. How much of incentives are being given? You must have come across. How much is it really doable? Is it really achievable? Thank you.
So I would say, it's a very challenging task to access, incentives. I mean, the thinking, the policy is right, the implementation of it, downstream becomes challenging, and for an entrepreneur to base his ideas on incentive support can be a serious risk. It can be part of your plan or to support your financial sort of structure, but to be entirely dependent upon the institutions. Any state government, central government, all these schemes, incentives, or the policy framework is there. Accessing it remains a challenge, and it could take a lot longer, for example. So basically, that would not be the right way of going about it. Is my view.
Did you have the Diwali celebration? Suddenly, the crackers or something came up. Diwali celebration.
I get that.
Thank you. Thank you. Over to moderator.
Okay. So now we would like, I would ask Professor Shri sir to propose a vote of thanks for this wonderful session which we had today.
Thank you, Abhishek sir. Good evening, all. No duty is more urgent than that of returning thanks. So I am delighted to have been given the pleasant duty of delivering the vote of thanks to those who have directly and indirectly contributed to this webinar on building a business from startup to scale. The Milk Mantra Way, organized by our institution, Bhavan Center for Communication and Management, Bharatiya, Vidya, Bhavan. A great company is not built in isolation. It is built by hiring smart people who believe in your vision and purpose. This quote by Srikumar Misra is true to his mission and vision of Milk Mantra. He left a highly successful global corporate career in 2009 to establish a company, Milk Mantra, with vision of creating an exciting and pure and healthy dairy products brand in India, whilst creating sustainable impact among network farmers, especially in Odisha. Sir, we compliment you for your courage in transforming challenging. Corporates need to play more active role in societal development and build purposeful business models which not only generate profits for its shareholders but are conscious about the needs of all stakeholders and drive delivery of the same. It is great to know that you have been an advocate and practitioner of this concept. Today he shared his experience, how to win trust of the consumers, importance of supply chain management in efficiency, brand building, how to utilize the available resources, means maximum utilization or optimum utilization of available resources, challenges in infrastructure and technology, continuous improvement of efficiency, strategy for introducing new products like Chenapudo, your charming personality, great oratory says to our students left a dent not only among students but amongst the faculty members of BCCM and large number of special invitees as well. Sincerely hope someday one of our students may pick up a simple clue from you and come up with a downstream startup project to make money. Sir, we thank you once again to spare your valuable time to be amongst us and hope in future through BCCM will receive your privileged patronage. I now thank our Chairman General V.K. Mahapatra sir, who was instrumental in getting Mr. Srikumar among us. Sir, your presence amongst the students always motivates them and invite creative ideas and positive energy to take up challenges. Thank you, sir, once again. I would like to thank our Director cum Dean, Dr. Sujata Mangaraj Madam, for her enthusiastic support. She has led us by example and always strived for making our business school unique and one of the best in Odisha and in India also. Thank you, Madam. A special thanks to the organizing committee, teaching and non-teaching staff for their unflinching support and coordination. Our heartfelt thanks to our students and the members of their active participation. With these warm words and a kind message, we move to the end of today's webinar. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Shukla. Thank you, Mr. Srikumar, once more. Thank you, Chairman, sir, Madam, all the faculties, and all the audience over here. We look forward to more such interactions with you, Mr. Srikumar. We look forward to you meeting physically as well, if time permits. And thank you very much. And with this, we'll be closing the session. Thanks once more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before closing, will Srikumar give out some of the feedback, whatever has happened, questions being asked, like that. Would you like to say something?
Obviously it's much better across the table to get a sense of the feedback and sort of the questions. But I think some of the questions which the audience has posed has been interesting, especially around thinking about the challenges of building a business and also thinking about sustainability as such, which I think is an extremely important dimension about everything. Not just the way we build our businesses, but the way we live our everyday lives as well. So I think sort of it's been a very nice session, and thank you very much for having me over.
Wonderful, absolutely wonderful. It has been a very, very delightful evening, and particularly listening from him, somebody who has gone through it. He has walked on the fire, taken risk. Without taking risks, nothing is possible. Nothing is possible. It requires guts, it requires courage. Nevertheless, he has shown the path, and we hope in future he will be available to us, to those students who are interested to have some startup, etc., to get motivated by him. If you agree, we will be very, very happy. Thank you very much. On behalf of everybody, thank you, Srikumar, for a wonderful session. And we wish you and your milk mantra with many more innovations and new products. Chanapada has been very good, and we expect something new will also come up. Thank you very much. God bless. Over to the moderator.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you take a group photograph? Swaroop,
sure,
can
sir.
you take a group photograph?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Please
sir.
take
We
a
can
group
take a group photo.
photograph.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
but I will.
some of the audience can switch on the videos for the group photo and say cheese, maybe.
Okay.
Oh dear,
The
host
audience
has disabled
can a video.
video, please. Host has disabled. Host has please switch it on. Professor Swaroop.
Is it done?
Switch on our video.
Over?
No, it is
No.
not yet over. I guess there is
No
some
Video.
problem? Okay.
Video is not switched on. Also,
The
Swaroop.
video has been disabled for all, sir.
Okay,
No,
so
no.
Okay. Is it over?
Yes, sir, it is over, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you
okay.
all of
Thank
you.
you. Thank
And
you.
God
Thank you
bless.
so much.
Wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Srikumar, really it has been a very delightful evening and the students had too many questions. But the time is 4:30, 1.5 hours. So next time when we have you, luckily physically or online, more questions will be shot at you. Thank you very much. God bless. God bless. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Also, Swaroop.